So last week we talked about pendulums and 1.5s. And this week we're going to talk about stalls, the other type of transition tool that you can use to get between same direction move and opposite direction moves. Now, stalls have kind of a similar idea to pendulums in that they're a way that you can reverse the direction of the poi, but they're very unlike pendulums in that pendulums have kind of a graceful continuation of movement that goes with them, whereas stalls are all about this very staccato kind of movement where you get the poi to stop moving and then pull it back the way it just came from, right? So to understand what's going on, we're going to go to the whiteboard to do, and I'm going to give you guys a brief overview of how stalls work, and hopefully it'll give you some idea of how you can begin to play with them. So this diagram behind me is basically a way of breaking down how stalls work. I've heard a lot of different explanations, and this is the best way I can make it work inside my head. Namely, this circle right here represents the path that the poi head is on, and the square around the edges with the corners represents where we're trying to stall the poi head to. So for example, I'm trying to hit these X's when I stall out the poi head. If I start off, say, with my poi head turning forwards, I'm going to try and hit that X right down there in the bottom corner, like so. Likewise, when I'm going reverse, I can shoot to hit that X in the upper left-hand corner, like that. What exactly is going on here? Well, the best way I can describe this is that when the poi head crosses by this intersection right here between this horizontal line that divides the circle into a top half and a bottom half, your hand is going to reach straight out along that line, and depending upon the direction that the poi is turning, if it's going forwards, it's going to go straight down along the side of the square to here, and if it's turning this way, it's going to go straight up the side of the square to here. Either which way, though, it completely stops the momentum of the poi. If you want, I can show you this in slow-mo, like so. So I hope that helped you guys visualize somewhat what exactly happens inside of a stall. Now that you've got the basic idea of how the mechanics work, it's time to actually start working on stalls. And the easiest one, I think, is the down stall. That is the stall where you're reaching to the bottom corners of the box and the poi is going straight down into them. Now, you could think of the method outlined on the whiteboard wherein your hand is reaching out after the poi is past the major axis. Or you could come up with a slightly less mathematic kind of visualization to play with. My personal favorite one is to imagine that you've just launched the poi out of a cannon, but there's something tied onto it, namely your hand. Now, if I were to shoot the poi overhead and it pulls my hand out, my hand, of course, isn't giving it any momentum. In fact, it's dragging it down. So as my hand gets pulled along behind it, the poi head is gradually going to lose momentum until it gets to the point where my hand is tracing out a path directly above the poi head. And notice how this starts off at my body center, and I've kind of bundled up my elbow like such. I've bent it. When I finish this move, my arm's going to be just about straight out. The reason being that as your hand follows the poi head out, you're going to have to let some of that slack out. It's extremely hard to do a stall if your arm is already all the way out and you want to complete the stall there. Don't do it that way. Always have a little bit of give in your arm, and that will help you get that really, really nice moment where you stop the poi head dead in its tracks, right? A lot of people, when they're first starting off, will have issues that the poi head will never come to a complete stop. You know, honestly, it's just practice, practice, practice. Keep both of these visualization tools in mind and practice in front of a mirror if you can. And that moment when it comes to a dead stop will come to you, I guarantee it. Now, once you've gotten it on one side, you want to pull back out and have the poi rotating in the other direction. Mind you, when I go into the stall, I was first going clockwise. Now coming out of it, I'm going to go counterclockwise. And then it's time to learn the down stall on the other side of the body. In fact, you want to get it to the point where you can do 10 stalls going back and forth on each side of the body. And once again, when I'm stalling off to the left-hand side of my body, note that I'm starting off from this place where my elbow is bent and going out to a place where it's more extended. And by doing so, it helps give the arc of the poi enough slack that it can come to a dead stop. Yeah? Cool. So the next stall you're going to want to play with is a bottom stall. And a bottom stall is just reaching for those same bottom corners, but you're doing so with the poi turning the other way when it starts off. So when I was doing the down stall, I was starting off in a place where my poi was turning clockwise, and I was reaching out to my right side. If I want to do the bottom stall, I'm going to start from a place where the poi is going counterclockwise before I reach out to the right side. This is a stall that's much, much easier to kind of BS if you don't know exactly how to get the stall clean, because once the poi goes out to the side, gravity helps you from keeping it go up. Really, this feels almost like you're doing an underhanded throw on either side of your body, as though you got a little brother or a little sister that you're trying to send the poi head off to. And you don't want to overshoot the height of it, so to speak, right? Now, technically speaking, these are the only two stalls that you need in order to get back and forth between your weaves and your butterflies. How do you do this? Well, let's say we're going to start with a weave. And there will be a moment over here on the left-hand side of my body when my right hand is on top. It happens right here. And again, right here. When that happens, you see how my arms are held really close to my body with my elbows bent, just like that initial position for a stall? Well, that's not by coincidence. It just so happens that when that right hand is on top, I can stall out with it. And the challenge here is that my left hand is going to keep on going while my right hand is stalled. This is really hard to work through. It's going to take a little bit of practice. But once this does happen, I can pull my right hand back into a butterfly position. When I want to switch back to the weave, I've got two options. And you know, sometimes people find one option more easy than the other. It's totally up to the individual. One option is that you're going to cross the right hand over the left, like so. So your arms are crossed, your left hand is still going, and your right hand is stalled. And then you're going to pull back around into your weave. Or you're going to reach down and do that bottom stall out to the side before dropping into the weave. It's totally up to you. In fact, once you get to this point, I really recommend drilling, going into 1, 2 beats of butterfly, stall out, 1, 2 weaves, stall, 1, 2 beats of butterfly, stall out, 1, 2 weaves, so on and so forth, right? If this gets to feel really, really good, you can go ahead and start playing around with a slightly more difficult stall too. This is the up stall, and this is the first one that we're playing with that reaches for that upper corner of the square rather than any of the lower corners of the square. And to do this, it's actually very, very similar to the bottom stalls out to the side, except instead of reaching out to the side, you're going to imagine that you're trying to throw the poi head directly up to the side on each side of your body, right? And here, your hand is going to try and reach under it, almost as if it's pushing the poi head straight up. Once again, it takes a lot of practice in front of a mirror to make this work. And it's okay if when you start with, it's not perfectly straight up. In fact, a great way of getting to it is to start with these bottom stalls right here and try and get the poi head a little bit higher above your hand every time until you can get it to that straight up place. And once you're there, it's a really cool option because it looks like the inverse of the previous stall that you did. And people really like seeing that kind of symmetry when you spin. Cool. So, experiment around with these. I cannot possibly overemphasize how useful stalls are. They open up a whole world of stuff when you get into intermediate and advanced spinning. So please, please, please play around with these a whole bunch and see what you can find with them. So thank you guys for watching this series, and I will be back next week with the first in a series of requests. So thank you guys so much for watching, and have yourselves a great week. I will see you next Friday. Peace.